Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is our 150th episode called Chelsea F. Today's episode is presented by Belly. Belly offers modern prenatal vitamins optimized for fertility, prenatal, and post-pregnancy health. To learn more about how to optimize your fertility and pregnancy health, check out their vegan-friendly, dairy-free, non-GMO vitamins for both men and women at bellybaby.com. That's spelled BELIBABY.com. The best part, if you use code ALLIE15, you'll get 15% off your first month of either Belly Women or Belly Men. Again, that's code ALLIE15, ALI15 for 15% off. Thanks, Belly. All right, guys. So today I am talking to Chelsea, who is part of a same-sex couple, and she's going to tell us about how she and her wife have been trying to grow their family since January 2020. So like so many others, they were derailed by COVID, and today she's going to tell us all about the rest of her story, which includes 7 failed IUIs, 7 guys being diagnosed with unexplained infertility, and their first failed round of IVF. And then she's also going to talk about what happened and why they had to use 3 different sperm donors. I didn't realize this, but there was a donor sperm shortage in 2020, which makes sense. So she's going to tell us about that and how it complicated things. And then she's going to tell us where she is today. There's a little bit of a twist ending, so definitely stick around to the end. Thanks so much to Chelsea. Thank you to you guys. And without further ado, this is Chelsea's infertility story. All right, Chelsea, let's get into this. Okay. Tell me everything. No, I want to hear, from the beginning, your story. Did you always want to have kids?
Yes. I know you always ask this question. So I was thinking about it a little bit, and I was like, there's not a time in my life that I can remember not wanting to have kids. So even from 8 years old, I think I've always seen myself as a mom. So
really, did you want to have a big family, or what did you have in mind? Like dream scenario?
No, I grew up, I just have one sister, and I think that's always been nice to have sort of a smaller family. Since then, my dreams have expanded a little bit to maybe more like 3, but that may change after, I know what parenting actually feels like. So,
okay. So growing up, did you know much about fertility or like your fertility or like how that all was going to work? We talk a lot about sex education and lack thereof.
Oh, that's a great question. So my parents were very young when they had me. And then my sister came 3 years later, but they were, I think my dad was 21. My mom was like 23, 24. So they always really beat into our heads kind of the order of things. So they were very much like, you go to college, then you get married, then you think about having kids. And that mantra was just told to us always. There was not a whole lot of education around anything else. It was more like don't even think about sex or anything like that, or family planning before you have, started these things in your life. So I think that they had maybe some trauma for themselves, as I've gotten older and can look back on that. Everything else is pretty standard. It was, 4th grade, 7th grade, and that was kind of it of learning how things work. And then as far as, kind of fertility goes, I think because my parents had us so young, I always assumed it would just be easy. My sister had a baby 5 years ago, not really on purpose. And so I also assumed like, okay, there's a lot of good, good signs here that my fertility should also be pretty good. So didn't really think much of it as we were going into things. So.
Okay. So when you first reached out to me, you wrote me an email talking about you and your wife's infertility journey. Mm-hmm. So when did you know that you were interested in women?
Oh my gosh, probably very early, to be honest. But I didn't let myself acknowledge it until I was more like 20. So a little bit later. And as soon as I came out, kind of have just been very out since. Was there a specific turning point when you felt more comfortable with your sexuality and like coming out? I know we could do a whole nother episode probably on that. What was that process like coming out for you and finally being able to live how you wanted to and being who you were or who you are? Yeah. So I'm from Indiana. So I grew up in a pretty conservative my family's not particularly conservative, but the surroundings certainly were. So I was never around queer people ever. And I think, my knowledge of anyone who's queer is really pretty limited and pretty stereotypical. When I was in college, I worked at a summer camp in Western Massachusetts for a couple of summers. And that was the first time that I was around anyone who was queer and young and cool. And, and it was just an epiphany where I was like, oh my goodness, like I can be who I am. And, it took a minute to get there, but it was like being around those people that really made me feel comfortable, I think, being who I am fully.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. So how did you meet your wife?
It's not the most romantic love story, but we met on a dating app.
Okay.
But it worked for us. So
did you guys start texting or, did you meet in person or like, what was it like at the very beginning?
I snagged her in I think it's a funny way. So she had on her profile that she was a speech pathologist, pediatric speech pathologist. My grandmother is actually kind of a superstar in that field. So she's kind of a pioneer in that field in a lot of ways.
Wow.
I name dropped my my grandma, my initial message to her. So we kind of started talking that
That's
way.
Amazing.
Yes. I don't know if she has any idea that happened, but
your grandma,
yeah, but she would be all about it if she did.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But yeah, so that was how we kind of started talking. And then, I was just texting from there. And we didn't actually go on a date for I think it was a month or 6 weeks or something. But after that, it was pretty fast and furious. So.
Okay. So when did you guys start talking about building a family together?
on our second date.
Awesome.
Which is hilarious. So she asked me, which is funny. She was like, do you ever want to get married? Do you want to have kids? And I said, I wasn't sure how to take that question because we barely knew each other. But I was very honest. I was like, yes, I do want both of those things. And at the time, she actually was a little on the fence about both, about marriage and kids. But she's since very much changed her tune about that. So,
yeah. Okay. So when you talked about that, what did you think that would look like for you guys? Obviously same-sex couples have to go, kind of assisted reproductive technology or some other means of having kids. So how did that look for you?
I thought I knew at the time. I had a very different picture, I think, of what it actually ended up looking like. And not just because we ended up, having fertility issues, but really my vision was always like artificial insemination. We would have a rosy time picking out a donor, and it would be such a nice, beautiful activity to get to do.
Did you think it would be a donor that you knew, or like a anonymous, or what did you have in mind?
No, we get so many honestly strange questions sometimes about that, and that's a whole part of the process that we could also talk about forever. But in my mind, I never really wanted to use a known donor. Even some of my best friends, I just felt like it has way too much potential to make a complicated relationship. That was my thoughts on it.
Okay. So what happened when you guys started to go down that road?
Well, we got married in October of 2019, and we knew we wanted to start pretty fast after that. So we identified the clinic we wanted to use, which is an hour away from where we live, even though
Are you still in Indiana?
No, we're in Michigan.
Okay.
So, yep. So we live in Lansing, and the clinic that we've been going through is at U of M, which is the best, in the state. So we made an appointment there, and our first appointment was February of 2020. So you can probably see where this is going. So we had our first appointment. It was great. We loved the doctor. He was fantastic. Loved the clinic, everything about it. And we did all the initial testing and all of that. And we had made a plan. So everything looked great for me. There was nothing of concern, except I was on like a migraine preventative that I obviously couldn't take while I was trying to conceive. So I had to wean off of that because it's kind of an intense med. So the plan was for us to start in March. So
March of 2020, nothing notable happened at that time in the world, did it? Wait, totally sorry, Chelsea, can we back up a little bit? So how did you guys decide who was going to be like the carrier out of the two of you? You didn't talk about that.
Yeah. So I'm actually 5 years older than my wife. So I was 34 when we first started trying. So I was having all sorts of age panic. And so that was a pretty easy decision really from the start. So our plan is actually for us both to carry.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's our dream. So hopefully that happens for us.
Okay. So you were like, I'll do it first because I'm older, and then she will do it again if if it happens a second time, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So March 2020, everything, world is great. Nothing to see here.
No. Yeah. So we truly were about to make our first appointment. And then the clinic was like, hi, we're not doing anything for anyone right now. So we just kind of put everything on hold. And I will say, the second that I found out that they had stopped all sorts of treatments, I was very grateful that we had not already started. It kind of worked out well in that way. Even though it pushed our timeline quite a bit. I was very glad that we weren't in the middle, because I can't imagine, we'll get to this, but eventually we were going through IVF, and I cannot imagine being in the middle of that.
Right. So it's not like your stuff got really canceled. It just kind of got derailed.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's easier, a little easier to take.
Yeah. So we were like, we're going to focus on health and supplements and learning everything. So we did that. Our clinic didn't reopen until I think July. It was quite a while. So at that point, had definitely decided on our donor and all of that. So we decided to set up our first IUI, and we were very hopeful. We had that in early August of 2020, and that one failed.
So sorry.
Yeah. At that time though, that was okay. We were like prepared. We were like, all right, like we knew this was probably going to happen. Let's keep going. So we did. Our doctors initially started me without any kind of medication or anything. They were that hopeful in my ability to get pregnant. And they wanted us to try 3 IUI cycles with nothing. But I really pushed for that, because I was like, I want this to happen fast, as fast as it can. So I did get them to start me on Clomid for our third IUI cycle. And that obviously added a whole lot of new elements. I over responded to that. So we had a few different canceled cycles because I had like 5 and 6 follicles. So we had to really dial back that med, which that felt promising. Honestly, it was like, well, my goodness, clearly this isn't the issue. And that was not the case. So we had, I think, 2 different tries where we had 4 mature follicles that were ready to go, and both of those failed. So we did a total of 7 IUIs, which is a lot. But
it is a lot.
It is. And I think, I don't necessarily have regrets at this point, but I think in retrospect, the data does show that probably should have stopped maybe a little bit earlier. But our doctors were just so hopeful, and they were so like, there's nothing here. There's nothing that should be, making this not work. So we were really listening to that. But after the 7th one, we had decided, okay, it's time for, to look at something else here. And, that sounds like, as I'm talking about it, it sounds so short. Like that sounds so fast, and it was
right.
Fine. But oh my gosh,
that's a long process. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Tell me about, I love to get into the emotional stuff always, and how it affected your relationship. How were you guys dealing with all this? That's you're putting your body through a lot. You're putting your relationship through a lot. What was it like, behind closed doors?
There was a lot going on last year, obviously. So my wife works in healthcare and was, doing that through the pandemic, which is extraordinarily stressful on her. And then by proxy, me. So we already had strain because of that. And then going through this was also just an enormous amount of stress. Not to mention this was our first year of marriage. Right. So it was a lot to be going through, I think, at the same time. We also had a massive house remodel that we were not expecting. We had, like a house disaster that happened at the beginning of the pandemic as well. So just so much stress all at the same time. But I think, honestly, until we got to the IVF side of things, we really were doing very well. Like we were really working as a team, and I felt like it was really bringing us closer. I think the longer that this has been drawn out for us, the harder it's been on us, and the more we've both been kind of processing on our own and having our own different experiences with everything. And it's hard. Like sometimes it's hard to connect about it when it's like, you don't know my experience. Like you don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what you're feeling exactly. And yeah, so we've had some, I don't know, like some tension and just some times where we've been really snippy with each other for no reason and, and have had to kind of come back together and be like, we need to reset here. We're clearly both having a hard time. Just kind of, going from there. So it has been hard for sure.
Did you guys have any friends, same-sex couple friends who were going through this as well, or anybody that you could count on, or any sort of support in terms of community?
Yeah. So we have, it's been interesting, and I don't know if everyone has this experience, but so we do have a few friends, quite a few who have been trying to conceive around the same time, some who are also same-sex couples and some who are hetero couples. And, I feel like it's always been a little bit challenging to know how to talk to people about this. So I think, for the people who it happened quickly for them, it's hard for me to like feel like I'm going to come in with my depressing story all the time and always be like, hi, I'm still the one that this isn't working for. And
totally. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And like watch people's compassion turn to like this sad pity. And you're like, I don't need that right now. And even
right.
Like you're trying to be helpful, but it's, it's like, I don't need you to just feel so sad for me. And so that's been tricky of like trying to figure out who I feel like I can talk to without feeling like it's going to totally bring their day down. And then, the friends that we have that are going through this too, like I know for me, every day is different. And so like, there are days where if somebody was coming to me and telling me about how they're having a hard time, like I might not be able to take it. Right. Like, it's just, I don't know. So that's been a hard dance, I think, of like finding people consistently.
Right.
Yeah. To be
for any same-sex couples who might be listening though, are there any like good groups out there that they can look into, or like anywhere that you found that you wish you would have known about sooner?
So that's part, you and I connected on Instagram. And that's part of why we started our Instagram. So when we first started looking into all this, there were so few resources that we were readily able to find, for same-sex couples specifically. Like the mechanics are basically the same. It's not like there's anything groundbreaking there, but there is a difference in experience, I think.
Yeah.
So Instagram has really been our best way of connecting with people. So there are quite a few accounts. I can't even think of any right off the top of my head, but there are quite a few people that we've been able to kind of follow their stories and, have it be a little bit less personal, but then also be connecting with, people out in the world who are having a similar experience. And that's been just, I can't imagine going through it without that. So,
right. Are there any good like hashtags or anything that people can search for, or anything that worked for you?
We followed like hashtag 2moms. I think that's been a good one of connecting with people, because almost every, same-sex couple has had to go through some form of fertility assistance. So that's been a good way to find some people. And it's really just kind of like escalated from there. So
yeah. Okay. All right. So what happened next with you guys?
Yeah. So I think it was April of 2021 that we had just had our 7th failed IUI. And that was the one that we had the vials left, so that we kind of were like, we'll just try it. And it didn't work. So we, talked with our doctors and decided that IVF was probably the way to go for us, which I won't lie, I had my own grief about that. I think for so many reasons. And again, I'm sure this isn't a unique experience, but as you say, it's the worst club with the best members. It's not a great time. And I was not looking forward to it. And it was something that even early on, I knew like, I don't want to do this. Like it seems terrible.
What's the big deal?
Where can you get pizza, bread twists, specialty chicken, and more for just $5.99 each?
Is it at Domino's?
He hands off hand-tossed pizza and a marble cookie brownie. He's going! There's a lot of variety on the radio and at Domino's too, where you can
Mix and match 2 or more. $5.99 each at Domino's.
2-item minimum. Pan pizza, bone-in wings, and bread bowls will be extra. Ask for this limited time offer. Prices, participation, delivery area, and charges may vary.
Right. Were you at this point? It's still you who's going to be the carrier.
Yeah. So I think one of the other huge things that I can't leave out here is that my insurance coverage has been amazing. And unfortunately, I have weird guilt about that, but that's enabled us in a lot of ways to really continue to pursue this for us. So
that's good.
Yeah, definitely still hasn't been cheap. For us, the cost of sperm alone has been probably over $10,000 to $12,000, I would say.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
out of pocket. So
Out of pocket.
yeah, so
Okay.
that's been rough, but
Uh-huh.
but yeah, so we decided that we were gonna try that and give it all we had and whatever. So yeah, so we moved forward and had the egg retrieval in June of this year, and it went well. I have so much respect for people who go through this over and over because it is so incredibly hard on the
Yeah.
body.
Wait, let me talk about, I was rereading the email that you sent. You talked about you used 3 different sperm donors because there was a donor sperm shortage in 2020. Is that because of COVID?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
So there was obviously a halt of people donating.
Right.
And so it was interesting. So every donor that we tried to use twice, we had donors who ran out of vials
Wow.
because people were just buying it up like crazy. And we were not in a position to buy 10 vials up front or whatever. So we did not do that. So yeah, so it's been that whole process of deciding on a donor is, I mean, wild. And so having to do that 3 times was, I wish we had been able to kind of stick with one, but
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't think about that as one of the other side effects of COVID, like the great sperm shortage of 2020.
yeah, it was funny.
Not to make light of it. I know this is painful for you guys, but you got to find levity where you can, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It did make it hard, I think, because you get your heart set on this one donor and you're like,
Right.
okay, this is our family. This is what we're, and then for that to just be taken away is like, okay.
Absolutely. And were there, going back to just choosing the donor, because I think a lot of people have questions about this, what were some of the specific things that you guys were looking for? Like, obviously people look at health and all that, but did it get very specific for you? Or with the shortage, did you not have a ton to choose from?
So my wife is, she's a child of immigrants. So her dad is from Iran and her mom is from Germany. And so we initially were looking really to kind of get as close as we could get from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, health was number one, but so looking in that way was challenging. That was a pretty niche, type of donor to try and find. So ultimately we really didn't end up finding that, but, that was one of our things that we were looking for. I think more than anything, we were looking for certainly health, I don't know how to talk about it, like intelligence, that kind of thing. And just someone who was a kind person, because they give you so much information on these donor profiles. And so we were able to kind of piece that out from.
Right. Were you reading essays? Did you listen to any videos or recordings or anything like that?
We did. I will say our current donor, I couldn't bring myself to listen to his interview for whatever reason, just because it is a little bit weird and it just makes it almost too personal sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how we are. I don't know if everyone's that way, but we did lots of essays. You're deep diving into their family health history and it feels just sort of weird, I think, but it is helpful to get all that info. And yeah, it's a tough decision to make for sure, but
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. Okay. So you did the retrieval and then how long before you guys, what happened with the embryos and all that?
So we ended up doing the genetic testing because of my age. And when it was all said and done, so we had the 29 eggs retrieved, but we had 8 embryos and then 6 of them were genetically normal. So we felt very good about that. That was more than we were anticipating. And of course, because of now kind of being in the infertility realm, I've seen so many stories and also listened to your podcast of, they're very different than that. So we had no idea what to expect. And so we were very glad that was our end result. So they were all frozen and they were, 5-day and looked good grade wise and all that. So we moved forward with our first transfer in August. So we had a couple months in between the retrieval and the transfer. And we were so excited. I thought it was going to feel just like an IUI because every single thing that we have done in this, in trying to start our family grow our family has been so clinical. And so I was like, this isn't going to feel that much different. But it really did. We got to see the embryo and our doctor made it just an amazing experience. And so we left there kind of with a renewed hope, I think. I really think going into the transfer, I had a really hard time feeling like it was different than the the way we'd been doing things before. So we left there feeling very good. Yeah, 9 days later, we had our beta, and I had taken some tests prior, and they were negative, but I had convinced myself that maybe, this was okay and it had worked, but it did not. So
I'm sorry. That's so crushing. Yeah. How did it feel when you got the news? Like how did you guys
it was
kind of grieve that?
It was hard. I think I think prior to going through this, I never would have understood how much, I don't know if it's attachment or what you would have to an embryo.
Absolutely.
And I'm not to get political, but I'm very pro-choice and all of that. But it just was like this whole different experience of like, this is a huge loss, it felt like a huge loss. And so
definitely
it was tough. So we both really grieved that for a bit.
I'd love to point out here, for anybody who's listened to this show consistently, you've probably heard this before, but if you are new here, we always talk about how a loss is a loss. A loss of an embryo is really hard. And I hope that, we can start to kind of realize that and give ourselves the grace of that and let ourselves be extremely sad, because you're not only losing a dream, it's like what could have been, it's a potential child, it's heavy. It's really heavy. And I think sometimes, it gets brushed under the rug a little bit in society, or people who aren't doing this. They're like, well, it wasn't really an actual baby, or, whatever they say. But you and I know, and so many other people listening, that it is so hard. A loss is a loss.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you, by that point, you've gone through so much to get there. And then it's just, there's a lot.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. And that was we do have some people that we were confiding in with all of this. And I think that there were some folks who just like couldn't quite understand the loss, if that makes sense. And that's no fault of their own. It's just, it kind of adds to the loneliness, I think, in a lot of ways, where it's that whole idea of like, well, just try again. Or, so there have been a number of points through this where people have asked, why doesn't your wife just try? And, like, because I really want this. And I don't think you would say that to anyone else of like,
completely.
Like, why don't you just give up? Like, no. So yeah, so that was hard. And that we found out, I think it was 2 days before my birthday, that it had failed. And so we just had a pretty rough time for that little, I think it was a couple weeks. We decided to reach out to the clinic and figure out when we could try again. And that happened much more quickly than we anticipated. So we ended up having our second try on October 22nd. And then on Halloween, we found out that transfer was successful.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yes. And I still can't say that without crying.
Oh,
so we
happy tears.
Yeah. Yes, they are. And I just loaded tears, I feel like.
Yeah. All the tears. Tell me about that. Did you feel differently from the first transfer? Like, did you feel pregnant, or did you have any other kind of indications or inklings that maybe it had worked?
I felt I wasn't particularly hopeful. I'm not going to lie. And I don't know if that was myself protecting me, or trying to protect me from, another disappointment or another heartache. So we just kind of went through our week. We love Halloween. So like, it was really well timed actually that we had that distraction of just like, we had like Halloween party and all of that. So we were really focused on that. I also think at that point I had stopped trusting any symptoms that I thought I was feeling, because there had been so many times during our IUI journey that I was like, this is definitely it. Like, I'm feeling this way.
Right.
So I think I really was questioning like the things that were actually happening. I don't know if that makes sense, but, which is a little bit, I don't know, just crazy making, but
yeah.
So, yeah, but I will say there were things that were concretely happening that, I had like a little bit of the implantation spotting. I had weird smell stuff for sure, where I was like, I could smell things my wife couldn't. And, like really sensitive to some things. But I wrote that off, or was like, it's probably just, whatever. And then I lost my appetite completely, like for 2 days. And so that was the 2 days prior to our first beta. So that kind of made me think like, something might be up. But with this one, I could not bring myself to take a test before our blood draw. So my wife was very, she was not happy about that. No, she wasn't mad, but you know what I mean? She really wanted to take a test and I just couldn't do it. I was like, I want to live in this little bubble right now, if we can, you know? So the day of the beta, so on Halloween, early morning, I did take a test. Like I'd like to know before, you know, I can't imagine getting that through our, you know, patient portal or whatever.
Yes.
So took the test. I couldn't look at it. It was just like, I just could not bring myself to do it. And so she had come down, you know, like 7 a.m. and she looked at it and looked at me and said, do you know what it says? And I said, no, yes. And she told me there were 2 lines and so I did not think I was going to get this emotional.
No, it's so emotional.
Yeah, so we both immediately, you know, burst into tears and we're so happy and all of that. I will say it was a bit of a roller coaster. Our first
absolutely
was pretty low.
Okay.
We had this, like, we were super, you know, over the moon. Then we get the blood test back and we were like, oh.
What were the numbers? Do you remember?
Yeah, so the first one was 48 and this is our 9 days after our transfer. And so our nurse told us that they usually look for 50 as like the lowest. And so we were like, I don't know what that's going to look like for us. And so they wanted to repeat the beta every 2 days I think they just did it 2 more times. So that was excruciating. I mean,
yes. Oh my God. That waiting is so brutal.
Terrible. Yeah.
How did you get through that? Like, what did you do to distract yourself?
Oh my gosh. I am not good at that. So really, I just, nothing. I didn't do anything. At this point, I just wallowed and obsessed for this one. I think I'd gotten better at the like 2-week wait, you know, of like staying distracted, but this wait was a total game. So I don't know. We just put our heads down and got through it. So, but the second one came back and, you know, we were again, very nervous. But it came back at 98. So we were like, all right, we just doubled. So it was like, okay. Like, is that good? And I think at this point, our excitement was a little bit like, what's going to happen here? So we went 2 excruciating days later for the third one. And our number was, I think it was like 292. So it had tripled from, you know, the second one to the third one.
Okay.
So at that point it was like, good, this is good. Doctors said, this is great. We will schedule you for this ultrasound. So we were hesitantly excited, I think, at that point, because we were like, you know, you read all these things that say the number doesn't really matter. What matters is if it's actually going up in a certain way. But we felt like surely the rug's going to get pulled out from us again. So we had to wait, I think, 3 weeks for our first ultrasound. So our clinic did a 7-week ultrasound to be sure that you could see a heartbeat. So we go for that, and I was a mess.
I'm sure.
The night before, I had convinced myself something was wrong, and we were going to find out that, you know, everything was
of
bad.
course, yes.
Like it was, I don't know if I've ever felt like that. It was a very like, I don't know, stormy, dark feeling. And so we go the next morning, and we have to ride a full hour in the car to get there, and that was terrible. So we get there, and there's a very strong heartbeat.
Oh my God. Yeah. Did you just burst into tears when you heard the heartbeat?
I did. And
the best sound in the world.
Oh, it's amazing. And so
I just got the chills.
I know.
Because I still remember that. Like it's visceral. You know, I remember that. It's so, the stakes are so high and it's so nerve wracking.
Yeah. And then they had us come back a week later for another one. And of course, in that time I had, hopefully this isn't TMI, but I had some like spotting that made me sure again that something was, you know, terrible.
There's no TMI on this show. You know that.
Yeah,
you listen, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so we went for the follow-up ultrasound, and we were both really nervous again because I'd had spotting that had turned a little bit pink, and like, you know, it was just so scary. But again, we had a very strong heartbeat, and baby had grown exactly as it should have. So that was a huge relief. And then we graduated from our clinic. So now we are out in the wild, just as
Oh my God. Don't you feel like the graduation from the clinic is so nerve wracking too? Like you're like, no, I don't want to go. This is my security blanket.
Yes.
You know, it's bittersweet. Obviously you want to get to that point, but it's hard.
Yeah. We honestly weren't expecting it that early either. We thought like, okay, they're going to, stay with us, at least through, because our clinic has, you do the progesterone until 10 weeks. I think everybody's a little bit different. And so we were like, surely we'll be with them through the 10 weeks, but nope, they just sent us out.
And what's the latest?
I've been okay. I've been very tired. I think more than anything, there's just been wicked anxiety, and that's been tough, but I'm sure that anyone who's gone through any kind of infertility has experienced that. So
absolutely.
It's kind of a feeling of like, am I ever going to be able to relax with this pregnancy? I don't know. But anytime I am feeling the symptoms, which mine haven't been severe, but they're definitely there. Very grateful for that and feel reassured. So, but yeah, mostly tired and, some nausea here and there. So
is there anything you want to share with, people who might be listening, same-sex couples in particular, who are just feeling lost or alone or not so hopeful? Anything that you can share with them?
I think especially as far as same-sex couples go, for us, connecting with people, even people we don't actually know, has been huge. There are resources out there. You have to dig for them, but there are blogs and things of people who've gone through similar journeys. But I think it can be an especially isolating feeling for many reasons. So I think that would probably be my biggest thing. That's been what's really held us up, has been finding just other people to connect with.
Are you cool if people reach out to you via Instagram and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. That was, honestly, that's why we started ours. We were like, we wanted this. We wish we had found this early on. And so, I absolutely would love that.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. I think it's so important to share these same-sex couple stories as well. If you have one of your own, please reach out to me. They're never enough to be told, in my opinion. So happy to share some more in our next season and as we move forward. So thank you, as always, for listening. Don't forget to check out Fertility Rally for some extra support. You can go to our website at fertilityrally.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Fertility Rally. And as always, you can follow me on Instagram at Infertile AF Stories. I'm happy to DM with you, answer any questions, or just be there for you if you need anything. So thanks so much. Talk to you guys next time.